Thank you. Before I call the member for Bass, I thank the Honourable Leader of the Tasmanian Greens. I just draw her attention to Standing Order 144, offensive words against a member. I was a little concerned during her speech about some of the motivations attributed to certain members. And I just draw your attention that a member shall not attribute directly or by innuendo to another member unbecoming conduct or motives. So I just ask you to reflect on that for the future reference. Call the member for Bass.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I was unaware, of course, that you would make that observation, and I appreciate you having done so, and I respect your intervention. And this is what bothers me about debates of this nature, that if I didn't happen to have my smartphone on my desk and I didn't have the exact right keywords to search my own record, I wouldn't have been able to so quickly rise to defend, at least in my own case, an improper motive that's been brought up by the Leader of the Greens just now in relation to Kangaroo Bay. And it's disappointing because as colleagues in this place, we ought to be able to have debates on policy and procedure without putting another colleague in the position, in the hot seat, of having to either be embarrassed or defend themselves when you may not actually have the clarity of the historical record handy, as I just happen to have. I support the motion moved by the Honourable Member for Braddon, Mr Garland, and I thank him for it. You know, we so often look at the notice paper and we find motions that really are designed to make Wednesday as uncomfortable for another member or party as possible. And I've been guilty of that. We all have been. There's no clean hands on that. We're here to make a difference and no doubt advance our independent members or party positions going forward. And then it's tested on the numbers on the floor of the House, totally proper. In the case of this motion, I read it looking for some hooks and I couldn't find any, except for the areas that Mr Garland, the Honourable Member for Braddon, has already removed through his amendment. The gentleman is acting very honourably, I will say that, in putting this motion forward and calling on the government to do a range of things, which the attorney's already responded to, and our government members on this side of the House are supportive of the amended motion. But then I have to sit here and wait my turn to speak and listen to that negative, soft corruption language from the Leader of the Greens, Dr Woodruff. I mean, I just think, you know, if you ever wonder why politicians have a bad reputation, it's because of contributions like that one and others where I'm holier than thou, but the rest of you are corrupt kind of style of speaking. It advances none of us and it advances our profession not a jot. As it happens, and I wouldn't want my contribution to be taken up with the Kangaroo Bay matter, but given that it was specifically raised, I speak only of myself. In relation to Shambroad and the Kangaroo Bay proposal, the government that I'm part of and was a minister of for a decade proudly stood behind that project year on year. My personal role, no, I should correct myself, my ministerial role in relation to Kangaroo Bay was when they applied for major project status as Minister for Planning on the 29th of September 2023. I did not grant major project status. I declined its application.
And you also refused to give access to your diary and
but you didn't say that.
About who you spoke
But Dr
to.
Woodruff, now you're changing the subject.
No.
I declined. I refused, as Minister, the major project application. Does that make me innocent? No, I don't care for your opinion to decide whether or not I'm innocent. If I'd have approved it, I would have done so on justifiable grounds. As it happens, I did not. In my role as a statutory observer of the law, in my role at that time, based on the information presented to me and the advice I was provided by my then department, I did not grant the major project status. It was refused. Regardless of what my diary disclosure may or may not have satisfied with Dr Woodruff, it was refused. And why is it that ministers or non-ministers, government or opposition, have to suffer these kinds of puerile debates that advance the Tasmanian public? Not at all. And I just expressed that disappointment right up front. I've been a member of this House for longer than nearly everyone here, and I can remember a time where, as a member of the opposition, the Liberal opposition, I sat over there just in front of where Mr Garland is, and we had a Labor Green government. A lot has changed since those days, and it's an absolute case of continuous improvement. I don't want to use my remaining minutes talking about how bad the Labor Green government was in terms of transparency and disclosure. Let me just summarise it. They were garbage. They were terrible. There are still questions on the notice paper that have not ever been answered from 2010 to 2014. That's a fact. And we've seen continuous improvement. Because as human beings, it doesn't depend on what party you're in as to how you can improve or recognise failures. Because we're all human, and no doubt disclosure can at times be uncomfortable. It's been continuously improved, as the attorney has outlined. Ministerial diaries. I don't think we had them disclosed when I was in opposition, and if we did, they were pretty minimalistic. I don't recall seeing ministerial diaries, and if we did, there wasn't much information shared. Gifts and benefits have always been disclosed while I've been a member of this House, so I don't see that that's been a big smoking gun. I want to see gifts disclosed, because if I was a recipient of, for example, a Qantas Club membership, complimentary use of their hospitality areas for people who are very often in airports and expected to be taking meetings while in transit, it's reasonable, therefore, that if that same member of that government or opposition were involved in supporting or opposing a decision by Qantas, it's reasonable that the gift be on the record. And if any member wants to make a claim that a benefit of that value is going to be something they've put their whole career on, you obviously don't understand politicians very well. I'm glad that we live in a country where accountability and transparency is so highly valued. And we've seen around the world in other jurisdictions where it isn't. And people get away with, I would say, murder. I'm being rhetorical. People get away with murder politically for the poor decisions that they take, which are not in their public's interest. And they don't have the institutional integrity that our jurisdictions, our national, our Australian jurisdictions have. Given to us, by the way, from the Westminster tradition, which I treasure. It then means that our biggest squabbles are down usually to matters of detail. And did you mean this or did you mean that when you said these words? And so the squabbles become far more down to a level of detail rather than just rudimentary declaring somebody corrupt or perfect or innocent. I appreciate the Honourable Member for Braddon's contribution through this motion. And, you know, I want to see, no doubt, like others, continuing increased integrity, fine-tuning through these processes, because my party won't always be in government and the Labor Party may not always be in opposition. Don't we want a strong democracy? Don't we want a strong parliamentary system? Don't we want the government? You may wish to disagree with the government on a decision, but at least know that it's been taken on good information and with proper motive. And that's what these measures, progressively being improved over time, are already providing. I'll just take one final issue with the Leader of the Greens' contribution, where she derided the idea of, and I wrote it down at the time, so I do quote Dr Woodruff. She said, processes have eroded over time. I don't believe that that statement can be supported by evidence. When a parliament, which is the people's house, overrides a decision or a recommendation of another entity, you can't just by that simple rhetorical claim say that that is soft corruption or improper. It is ultimately the test. The Planning Commission, any other commission, has only got its head of power because it's been delegated by this House in the first place through a law that was made by the state. And if a government or an opposition wanted to upend, change or differentiate itself, those commissions usually say, well, that wouldn't be a matter for us, that would be a matter for the Parliament. And the reason I say that confidently is because we're elected here by the people of Tasmania to make decisions, hopefully make wise decisions, and then be ultimately accountable for those decisions at the following subsequent election, where the people will, as they always do, have their say and, as they always do, get it right. Thanks to Mr Garland for your motion and your own contribution to strengthening governance in our state.
Thank the honourable member for Bass.